Assalamu alaikum, welcome to our YouTube channel, Isra Academy. And I am very blessed to have two people today in our podcast. I have Dr. Omer Atilla Ergi, our regular, let's say, lecturer in Islamic Theology and physicist. Welcome, Dr. Omer.
Hello, well, thank you, Dr. Zulaikha.
Thank you. And we also have Professor Mehmet Ozalp this time joining us, which is fantastic. And Professor Mehmet is a lecturer in Islamic Theology as well. So we've got two theologians here, and he's also a lecturer in Mantiq. Welcome, Professor Mehmet.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Yes, it should be a very good discussion. We're talking about a topic that arguably may not have been discussed before, and from an Islamic perspective, that is. And we're talking about infinite universe and whether it's in line with Islamic teachings. Right. So, and we'll expand on that. But firstly, for those of us, or for those of our audience who have never heard of infinite universe before, what is an infinite universe? What's your understanding? Let's first start with Dr. Omer.
Okay, it is an interesting topic, from astrophysical perspective as well, astronomical perspective. There are some theories that people suggest an infinite universe. That depends on the structure of the universe. They say if it's a flat universe, which is most people are looking at the universe as a flat universe at the moment, and they assume that it can be infinite. So from an astronomical perspective, it is one of the possibilities that they suggest. However, there are both philosophical and scientific inconsistencies in accepting a infinite universe.
Okay, so before we go into those, then that's going to be a big focus. When we say infinite universe, maybe Professor Mehmet, when we say infinite universe, what do we mean by infinite universe? Does that mean that the universe, what does it mean that if a universe is infinite?
Well, before we go into that, I just want to say that while this topic may be new for us, contemporary times for Muslims to discuss, the idea of an infinite universe or eternal universe was discussed in the early history of Islam, Islamic theology, because the Muslim theologians and philosophers also, they thought about the problem of eternity. Something has to be eternal for universe to exist. Like, why do we have something rather than nothing? I guess when we say something, this universe exists, we have matter, it's vast, there's space. It may not have existed at all if it was by itself.
Okay, so you're saying something eternal needs to exist for the universe to exist?
Exactly, because if something had a beginning, it needs a cause. So eternity means it doesn't have a cause. And the problem was in the past, like we're talking about 1,000 years ago, people thought that universe was eternal. And then we believe in an eternal God as well, but they cannot be eternal at the same time. So the Muslim theologians have always started with the point that either God is eternal or the universe is eternal. Since universe is not eternal, has a beginning, therefore God must be eternal. And they call it necessarily existent God. So by implication, or if someone believes in an eternal universe, then that universe must be infinite. Because because if it always existed, then there can't be a limit to it. So it must be infinite. But that has a problem.
What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, of course I agree, because classical.
They agree.
Classical Islamic, theology, we can see that nothing can be eternal other than God or infinite. But when we're talking about the term infinite, what are we exactly, pointing to? Is it a infinite in space or infinite in time? But as you know, in physics, the two does not become separate. They are one unit. Because some people say the universe has 3 dimensions, and the 4th dimension is time. Time cannot be separated from space. So that's why we say space-time, not space and time. But for the argument purpose, I think we can sort of explain them as 2 concepts. We can say infinite as in the sense of time, or infinite in space. So we can handle them from those two perspectives.
So you
maybe.
said you can't separate them, but we're going to separate them.
We're going to separate and just to analyze them.
For
Otherwise,
analysis
if from a
purpose.
scientific perspective, we don't separate them. We say space-time.
Right.
But here's the thing, why can't we have an infinite universe from my perspective? It is not possible philosophically. It is not possible scientifically from my perspective, because we know at the moment that the universe had a beginning. Because when we look at the models of the Big Bang, the expansion, and if we reverse the expansion, we come to a point where we call, in regards to its size, we call it the Planck length. It is 10 to the minus 35 meters, which means that nothing can be smaller than that mathematically. And the universe gets squeezed into that space.
There's also Planck time.
Planck time as well. So Planck time is 10 to the minus 43 seconds. So you cannot have a smaller time than that. So since you can squeeze the universe into a point which we call Planck length, you cannot take a step before that, because physics, as we know it, ceases to exist. There is no smaller space. It means that the universe actually had a beginning in time, not in a point in space. That's why people get it confused. They think that there was this emptiness, vacuum of space, which is infinite, and within that space, at a point, the universe began with the Big Bang. But that is not the answer. That's not what physics says. There was no space, there was no emptiness, there was no vacuum. So space-time began at the same instant, space-time together. Anything that has a beginning, like Mehmet Hoca also mentioned, it has an end as well. It's temporal. It is contingent, which means it's dependent on something else to exist. Therefore, that's why we say there is an infinite, everlasting, never-ending God, which actually commenced this, process of existence, created this process.
Right.
Yes.
I think this idea of space and time being created together is a very good, it's an old thing, and Muslim theologians discussed it. Imam Maturidi, in his Kitab al-Tawhid, mentions, in relation to, this idea that is God in the sky or not, or can we give a direction or location to God, he's saying we can't, because before God created space and time, God existed. So he cannot be located in a space.
So he's beyond space and time.
Yeah, he's transcended beyond space and time. But he's mentioning space and time. That's a very interesting, about 1,000 years ago.
Yes.
And we know that with Einstein, theory of relativity, he has linked space and time, which is very important, and it's been proven to be true. So if that's true, as you said, space and time cannot be separated. When we're talking about an infinite universe or eternal universe, we have to think of space and time together. But I think this issue has come up again. In a way, it's gone in circles. That before Einstein, even Einstein believed in an infinite universe, by the way.
The steady
state model, which said unchanging infinite universe, or eternal universe, I should say, that it's always existed. And that was the belief of the Greeks as well. Like there was universe always existed, that gods brought it from chaos into some order, But in Islam, we definitely believe that universe started to exist with God's creation. So Muslims were very deliberate, Muslim theologians, about this. Like even Al-Kindi, when he goes through all these lengths, try to prove that the universe has a beginning, he wrote a book-length proof, because I guess in the lack of astronomy, or there's no Big Bang theory at the time, he had to do it in different ways. Interestingly, he talks about time, time being relative. He uses that as a proof that universe has a beginning. And therefore, universe is created, therefore it's not infinite. But so that was still outside of Islamic circles, like in the rest of the world, or let's say science or astronomy, they thought universe was eternal, infinite, until Big Bang theory came in, and that it was proven that there was a lot of hard evidence that universe had a beginning. But now it's turning back again after James Webb telescope was sent, and it's taken some images of distant universe, and the images that they're taking is these galaxies are really well developed. They were expecting it to be not that developed. So people are jumping into conclusions. I'm saying, like, there's all these material out there. Even the well-respected astronomers, just a couple of images doesn't prove anything. They're jumping back into saying, "Our universe, maybe Big Bang never happened. Universe is infinite." They want that to be the outcome, because the moment you have a beginning universe, you've got a problem. You have to have a cause or a causa to bring it into existence, and that can only be God.
Yeah, maybe I should rewind it back a little bit and go back to Edwin Hubble when he first discovered that the universe is expanding. You know, when he pointed his telescope at various galaxies, he realized that they were all moving away from us. So the universe was expanding, and I remember reading Albert Einstein, after hearing this research, he said, "It looks like we have a beginning for our universe." It's a very famous statement. After reading, Edwin Hubble's paper. The thing is, there are a number of, as I said, inconsistencies in regards to an infinite universe. One of them is in regards to time. Can the universe be there at all times? Not beginningless. There's no beginning. That is not possible philosophically, because if time was eternal in the past, it means that we could never get to present. This is a philosophical argument. The reason for that is, if we build a spaceship, all right, let us say we can travel in time, and we started going back in time. No matter how much we go back, we will never get to a beginning. It is not possible, because beginningless. Yeah. Because so how did we get from there to today, to the present? So if we can't get to the beginning, so they say that's not possible. Time cannot be infinite, in the past. That is one thing, and there is a geometrical problem with it too. We cannot envision an infinite universe in size, because let us assume that we can draw a circle and we say this is an infinite universe. El-Kindi has a similar argument, you might remember. And we draw a circle. No matter how big the circle is, let us say it is infinite in size, a circle will have a diameter. If the circle is infinite, the size, then the diameter must be infinite. Then what is the radius? Half a diameter. That has to be infinite too then.
But you can't have a radius if it's...
You can't have a radius there, but...
If it's infinite, there's no circle.
That's what I mean. So it is paradoxical, but we're just assuming, we're just painting a picture. And if it's infinite, and if you divide it in half, just imagine it to be circle, divide it in half, there will be two infinites. If you take some matter from one of them and add it to the other one, this one will grow in size, this one will reduce in size. Infinite does not grow, infinite does not shrink. So
it's always the same.
There is a geometrical problem there as well. Right. But in regards to the James Webb discoveries recently, there is an explanation for that now, just recently. What they say is our galaxy and few other galaxies like the Andromeda galaxy, we are in a huge void in space, in the universe. Void is an empty place. It's huge.
Earth?
I'm talking about this Milky Way galaxy, Andromeda, and few local groups.
They're all in a void.
And we are in a void. Void is huge, empty space.
Right.
And it's very interesting. In voids, time flow faster than in big galaxy clusters. Okay. So when we look at distant clusters of galaxies, they seem to us as, moving faster, and time is going faster as well, because time is going faster for us. But for those galaxies, it's an explanation. They say that time, runs or flows slower than our galaxy. So there is an explanation for that, but the most distant galaxy we discovered so far through James Webb as well, it's about 500 million years after the Big Bang. And some say that they are not really developed galaxies. They say that it is just their center, the black holes at their center is so large, so huge, it's giving out more light than that we imagined before. So they seem to look like that. That is another argument.
I think the people are just jumping into conclusion because they want universe to be infinite, because they don't have to deal with the problem of a beginning universe.
Yes.
There's another story about Einstein. There's a scientist, also a priest, Lemaitre. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Before Hubble, he comes up with the idea of a Big Bang, the beginning universe. He does all his mathematics and he gets an appointment with Einstein. Einstein listens to him. He says to him, your mathematics is great, but your theory is terrible. And he goes disappointed, the poor guy. But later, he is true, Einstein is wrong.
Yes.
So there's been a lot of proofs of a beginning universe. Like the background radiation was predicted, that's been detected.
Yes.
Very important. They cannot be explained other than a beginning universe.
What does this mean? I guess what are the implications of this from an Islamic perspective, especially when we're talking about the afterlife? As in, if we're talking about eternal, because eternal afterlife, does that mean that life is not eternal then?
Before we go there, I was going to mention something that I guess when we say time started with the creation of the Big Bang, what sort of time does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala operates, God operates? Or we say God is timeless, or he's in a state of timelessness. But it's very hard for us to comprehend that, right? So
Yes.
Because something has to pass, right? Sort of we sort of perceive time as succession of events, or sometimes even thoughts that you might have. There's a succession, like it's not frozen. Like timelessness would also mean frozen, nothing happens. So, but if something is happening, so there's some time outside of the time in the universe. Like the nature of time that we have now is a very interesting. I mean, by the way, people haven't solved this.
Yes.
But it seems that it's the speed of causality, how quickly things happen. Like right now, for example, we are at rest in the speed of light. Everything goes through time in the speed of light. Can you imagine that? This is hard to imagine, but that's very important concept that even creates gravity. In the Einsteinian relativity, it's a bit complex, but if we assume that, or not assume, but Islamically, God is eternal, and timelessness. He has the attribute of qadam and baqa. Qadam means He's past eternal, like there's no beginning. Baqa means there's no end. So I personally think, like Islamically, definitely this universe has a beginning, but this doesn't stop the possibility that God may have created other universes prior to this one and destroyed it. Because, like, imagine, like God, what was God doing before He created the universe? Like, even 13.8 billion years that's given to the life of this universe is nothing compared to eternity.
But by saying that, aren't we kind of judging God based on time, though? Saying, what did He do before this universe?
Not judging, but what I'm saying is that one of the Islamic theology is that if God He has the attribute of creator, like Khaliq, creator, He always creates.
Yeah.
Like He doesn't start creating at a particular time. Like He may create things in time, but He's not a creator in time. Like His attribute doesn't start in time. He was always a creator.
Well, that's like
which
saying,
means like He will always create.
Okay, so
something.
I guess it's like when we say he's all-knowing, his knowledge is eternal. So when we're saying he's a creator, he's ongoing creation. It's not a snippets here and there. It's not when the earth started. What are your thoughts on it?
There are two things there. One of them is, God doesn't really need to create to become a creator. That's one thing,
Yep.
A person can be an artist. A person doesn't need to really make an art. But it is an indication that person is an artist. So that's why Allah creates, because he's a creator. But the thing is here is this. In regards to time, because that's the main thing here, time is very difficult to define. We don't even know anything about time in regards to its essence. Why time exists. Why does it flow in one direction, like a river? We don't know any of these things, why. But the thing that we know about time is we can measure it very well. That's the only thing we do. And like Mehmet just said, in regards to what time is, they define it in simple terms as, the events happening one after another, and it is the intervals between them, the period that passes between them. That's how they define as time. Some philosophers say there is no such a thing as time, but they are quite, exact or prompt when it comes to, coming to a meeting on time. So that is a very interesting thing too. So yes,
Another paradox.
There's a very
interesting
There's
thing.
a very good Islamic definition of time from Said Nursi. He says he links it to knowledge of Allah or knowledge of God, because everything exists in knowledge of God. And this universe is like a screen, and present time is the flow of what's in knowledge of Allah, knowledge of God, into the screen of universe and out of it again. So from Imam Mubin to Kitab Mubin, he says, these are expressions in the Quran, like the Imam Mubin, Kitab Mubin means records or titles of Allah's God's knowledge. He says time is the vibrations that we feel, vibrations in a sense that it's the flow that we feel of that knowledge from Imam Mubin to Kitab Mubin. That's what creates time. I found that really interesting.
Time.
It's a very Quranic, very Islamic explanation of time.
Well, time is relevant. Depends on where you are. Depends on how fast you are traveling, and depends on the gravity around you. Time changes. The flow of time changes. There is a verse in the Quran in Surah Ma'arij, verse 4. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, angels and the spirit ascend to him in a day which is 50,000 of your years. So we can see that the special relativity is mentioned there already in the Quran, because, one day for angels is 50,000 years for us. It's very interesting. But the thing is this, in regards to these are very heavy philosophical topics. In regards to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, could he have created many universes before its possibility? We can never say no, like you said. But he may have created billion universes. This is quite similar to, of course, the multiverse theory, but in regards to an ongoing universe, they had this theory which was called oscillating universe, or now they call it the bouncing universe. The universe expands and then collapses onto itself, and then another Big Bang occurs, and this keeps on continuing. This does not hold anymore. Physicists don't really accept this because there's not enough matter and energy in the universe. It's limited. And they say this cannot cycle like this for eternity. Another important thing here is, could there be many universes? Billions and billions of them, like the multiverse. It is possible, but it still doesn't solve the initial creator
or the
concept.
Problem.
It doesn't solve it because, if you find, for example, an object, let us say, in the desert, or we travel to Mars and we find this round object, metallic object there. Obviously, we would say, where did this come from? Because it needs an explanation of its existence. We need to, come up with a reasonable argument, sufficient reason. They say, well, how it got to be there. Now, if we increase the size of the object to the size of the Earth, we're still going to ask the same question. If we increase it to the size of the universe, we're still going to ask the question, where did it come from? Because there's causality. This is not a one unit. It is made up of little pieces, many other components. Set of things cannot be lined up in an infinite time. So we need to, ask, where did it come from? It still doesn't change if we have billion universes. Where did they all come from? So there has to be a beginning, because everything else is contingent. Matter, energy does not exist for eternity, which means someone had to cause them. And that cause has to be uncaused.
That's right. So there's a third alternative, which what I was saying. So basically, oscillating universe, that is, Big Bang happens, it expands, then collapses back again, and then expands again, and just forever. That's with discounting that one. Multiverse idea, where there's bubbles of all these countless universes within another multiverse, which is basically saying another universe.
A larger body.
Larger universe.
Yeah.
But that means that larger universe is infinite. That multiverse, let's say, that's infinite. That creates another problem of infinity. Where did that come from?
Yes.
Why is that? What does that exist rather than nothing? So basically, some atheists sort of really go on to that multiverse.
Yes,
Universe has a beginning. Who created? There's multiverse. They just escape into that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that doesn't solve the eternity issue problem.
Exactly.
So, like Islamically, I think the universe cannot be infinite, as we discuss. However, I think the third alternative is possible. I'm not saying it is, because I don't want people to misunderstand. I'm not proposing that as a belief, but as a possible explanation that if God is infinite or eternal, and He's a creator, He's got creative ability, there's no reason why He should be creating one universe, destroying it, and that there's nothing else after that. So even like our idea of afterlife has to rely on a recreation of a universe. Ultimately, like when Quran is talking about stars being scattering, the mountains crushing, how does stars scatter? There has to be, the gravity goes out the window. So the whole universe must be changing, with Qiyamah, the doomsday scenario.
Collapsing.
So for us to be resurrected, maybe a new creation of a new universe will have to happen.
What does this all mean in relation to belief in the afterlife? So I asked this question about 10, 15 minutes ago.
Afterlife.
Like we talk about eternal belief, eternal existence. That's how Muslims believe, that we're going to be resurrected based on actions. We have heaven and hell, and there's hopefully eternal bliss. But if you're saying there's no infinite universe, it doesn't have you're saying it has a beginning, which we've had this compelling argument. Will it have an end?
You're talking about now afterlife.
Afterlife, at the end. So the beginning we kind of talked a lot about, but at the,
isn't that a different topic?
But maybe we can explain it very shortly.
Sure.
Like Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, like you mentioned before, he says the universe does not disappear at Qiyamah. He says it gets transformed into Ahireh. That's the way he looks at it. But how can we, understand this with Khalidina fiha abada? The Quran says you will exist there for eternity, in the life after. The way I look at it, this is my perspective, I don't see Jannah, the paradise, as being infinite in size. There's no such a thing. Then why would you put Allah in an infinite? You got to put Allah in it, and that's not logical. It is not infinite inside. It's quite big. There's no doubt about that, because all the explanations about Jannah indicates to that. It's a huge place, Jannah. But in regards to time, it is ongoing. It is infinite. But I don't think time there flows in a straight line. Because if time flows in a straight line, it means it's endless. There is no such a thing as end. Then that contradicts Allah's infinite knowledge. Because infinite knowledge should encompass everything. How is it going to encompass something that flows for eternity? There is not an end. So I believe time will be circular there. It's cyclic, we should say. time is a place where something repeats itself. And when we explain this in regards to this universe, you cannot have an infinite time in a straight line, but you can have an infinite line. For example, if you're orbiting the Earth, let us say, you can keep on orbiting it in a circle. Keep on orbiting it. As long as you exist, time will exist. That is encompassing. And Allah's knowledge which encompasses that. Yeah, that's my
So that's how you reconcile,
view.
infinite eternity with limited time.
Yes.
Because it's circular. Okay.
Just what Sarnusi said about the universe, he says the same material will be used, but a new universe is created.
Exactly.
Because his justification of that is that this universe served a purpose.
Yes.
Before.
Like a very valuable service before. It shouldn't be destroyed. Like there's no reason why it should be destroyed. It could be reused again. So in a way, God will honor this matter, this material, by giving it a new existence in a new universe. But that
I agree.
Yeah, that's his explanation. Obviously, we don't know. I guess Allahu Alam. We should always say.
At the end, we always say Allahu Alam.
Because we don't know.
But I guess
it creates so many other questions. But anyway,
the thing is, I guess with this infinite and eternal, I just come back to it, back and forth. I think the issue is really about being eternal or everlasting, let's say, for human beings. We want to live forever. We want to be everlasting existence. We cannot imagine a time where we will cease to exist. Like actually, one of the evidence for afterlife is that if there is a God, and if God is merciful, that He would bring us back to life again.
Yes.
Because making us taste this life and existence for a while, only to make us non-existent, is actually a cruel thing to do. It's like taking a kid to park, playground. They enjoy themselves, and then you say, "Hey, you're never going to come back again. I'm never going to bring you to this park again." The kid would
that's
cry.
Not mercy, would it?
Exactly. That's very cruel for a mother or parent to do that. But I mean, that happened to me with my kids. I always say to them, "Look, you're going to come back." That's the only thing.
Give them that hope.
Yeah, that's the only thing that would be acceptable for them to return home. So I guess we need that, like as human beings. So, surely we believe that there is a God, and God is Rahman, Rahim, all merciful and compassionate.
Yes.
So He will give us eternal life because that's what we want the most, foremost human need.
Can we say as a last point, maybe, Mehmet?
I was going to ask if you have any last points as well. Yeah.
Okay. Can we say this? For us to have an eternal life in the hereafter, there needs to be an eternal being, because our eternity will depend on the eternity of that being, which is God, an agent that is eternal. Yes.
Okay, to have an eternal life, you need to have an eternal being.
Yes.
But your point about that eternal life, time is potentially cyclical, and that's how it becomes possible.
That's what I think, because otherwise it would contradict with God's infinite knowledge. Yes.
Yeah. Just if I may sum up, I think the beginning point of our theologians is a really good one. It's a logical one. Either God is eternal or universe is eternal. Since universe has a beginning, we've proven that it has a beginning. We haven't proven that it's eternal. On the contrary, there's evidence that it has a beginning. So there must be an eternal being.
Yes.
Who brings this universe into existence. So that is a very clear Islamic position.
Yes.
The only thing that I would like to add to that is there is a possibility that our Creator may have created universes before, or may create afterwards. But
I agree, 100%.
There's nothing. So in a way,
those two things seem different.
In a way, we could say there's no limit
to His creation,
to God's creation. and that's as far as we should really go in this topic.
But did you have any further
No, I
comments?
agree. I agree.
Okay,
with
we
that,
all
yes.
agree, and thank you for watching, and see you next time. Assalamu alaikum.